there's quite a few learnings. I call it the things I wished I had known. And it was something that I sat down and reflected upon recently, a few months ago. And I was thinking about, if I had a do-over, what would have loved to have known at the time, especially being a new business owner. So having the responsibility to implement a project at the very beginning of taking ownership of a business and business process. What are the things that I wish I had known, especially within a large organisation? And I reflected on in terms of how can I support others that might be going through this journey in the future, and also more broadly how I can learn from this myself.
Welcome to episode 50 of the Inner Game of Change podcast, where I focus on exploring the multi-layers of managing and enabling organizational change. My name is Ali Juma, and this is the Inner Game of Change podcast. In today's 50th special edition, my guest is Bridget Soulsby, a thought leader and executive director in the higher education industry. Throughout her capacity as a decision maker, Bridget excels in navigating through the dynamic university setting, fostering a long-term view to balance the needs of staff, academics, and students. In this episode, Bridget shares with me her invaluable insights and lessons she learned as a result of a recent strategic change. I am inspired by this humble leader and grateful for her time with me today. Well, Bridget, thank you so much for joining me in the Inner Game of Change podcast. I am grateful for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Ali.
Thank you very much. Bridget, today we're going to talk about your experience and some of the learnings that you've learned and the lessons that you've acquired during a transformational change that happened within your organization. But before you dive deep into the topic and the learnings, it would be fantastic for you, Bridget, to introduce yourself to my audience.
Yeah, thanks, Ali, and thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here and joining you today. My name is Bridget Soulsby. I'm the Executive Director of Operations at Trobe University, and my role within the organisation is to provide operational leadership in the management of professional services, and these include things like facilities and technical services, so like workshops and laboratories that students and researchers utilise, through to things like placement and work-based learning operations, looking at domestic and transnational education operations, strategy and planning, widening participation in outreach activities and enabling programs, and then also the professional services directly provided to our academic staff and colleagues within the schools within the university. I've been working in the higher ed sector for a very long time. I originally trained as a biophysicist and worked in neuropsychiatry research for a number of years, focusing on neuroimaging. I studied a little bit in higher education policy and became fascinated in higher education. And that's when I transitioned across to university management and have worked at a number of different organisations and have been working at La Trobe for about 10 years now.
Fantastic. And La Trobe is keeping you busy, Bridget?
Absolutely. It's absolutely. The higher education environment coming out of COVID has kept a number of us very busy. Throughout the pandemic, it was very challenging, but it's really great to see now things emerging coming out of the pandemic over the last couple of years. It's great to see so many more students and colleagues coming and joining us on our various campuses here in Victoria. And it is just great to see that higher education in Australia is starting to rebound after some really challenging years.
So good to see also international students coming back to Australia and to the universities here and experience our way of living in here.
Yeah, it really enriches the higher learning experience. So in terms of a traditional university experience and also some of the other experiences that we're offering as well for our students across regional Victoria and here also in Melbourne. It is great to see international students returning and seeing their engagement with their subjects and also with our various campuses and the staff here at the university as well.
Bridget, today we're going to touch on a topic related to your recent learnings. You're still learning, I think, during a drastic transformational project and change that impacted the way the university is managing workload planning and all of these critical activities. And obviously a change like this comes at a critical time, but also comes with its own challenges. What is your role and what was the change at a higher level?
Yeah, thanks, Ali. As you mentioned, what we have been implementing recently here at the university is a new planning platform. And the first process that we wanted to roll out on this enterprise-wide planning platform is to support academic workload planning. And previously, the process was supported in a not ideal or fit for purpose way. And one of the things that we set out to do was to build a platform that enabled the business process, to happen with something that was creating transparency and encouraging and providing consistency, that met a number of different requirements that we had, not only for being able to staff the timetable, but also to meet some of our other obligations under our collective agreement. And the way it had been done was quite fragmented. We didn't necessarily have an enterprise-wide platform that was currently being used in the previous couple of years, and it was something that we knew that we needed to direct attention to. My role in the project is I was the business owner, so owning the business process and the actual solution to be able to enable that process. And specifically in this particular project, I saw my role is in terms of working with the team that was established to work on the project and provide that connection into key stakeholders across the organisation, which are the planners and those that were going to be in receipt of reports, and working with our various divisions across the organisation to make sure that what we were solving for and co-designing in the project was going to meet the needs of the organisation and also the colleagues that were going to be working in and implementing that process on a day-to-day setting and throughout the cycle that is being implemented when we undertake workload planning.
And I assume, and let me know if my assumption is wrong, that you were not just leading the project, you were still doing your business as usual job as the executive director of operations.
Absolutely. So I don't set aside my role to pick up the work in this particular project. So balancing that activity on a day-to-day basis is something that I do direct attention to make sure that I'm still directing attention to the business as usual activities in terms of supporting colleagues and the broader team members within the Provost division, and also directing the attention and getting my hands dirty in the work of the project itself. I found that to ensure that we were keeping up with our milestones and our deliverables, working alongside the team members and making sure that we are getting that adequate support, I found that was something that I could see was making a tangible difference in the project on a day-to-day basis, just like any other business as usual activity as well. Sure. Understanding what's happening on a day-to-day basis and working out how you can support your colleagues better in doing so.
And that's really music to our ears in the change management community, because we always aspire to have leaders joining the projects, taking an active, visible, and become an advocate for the change as well. We do believe in that messenger effect when it comes to strategic projects like that. You got some learnings of the journey so far. I think it's been going, for 12 months now, probably more?
Yeah, a little bit more than 12 months. So we officially kicked off the project in April last year, and that was those real early days in terms of being clear around what the requirements were and establishing those, and then starting to look at potential solutions and so forth. But when it came to the rubber hitting the road with, okay, this is what we're going to go with, we now need to start designing, co-designing and working on delivery. That happened in around about July, August last year, so about 12 months from today, where we started to really work and connect in on actually building the solution. Yeah, there was a number of learnings along the way that, especially around working as a business owner on a particular project that I'm still learning from today, because we're not on off project yet. We still haven't concluded, and I'm not quite sure what that feels like or looks like on the other side of concluding a project. We've still got some deliverables scheduled for the next couple of months.
Yeah, so the project was a phased approach, my understanding is. And the second thing is that it impacted every single school in the university. Is that right?
Yeah. So we have 10 schools within the university. So, and they are aligned to disciplines such as humanities and social sciences, science, agriculture, biomedicine and environments, through to computing, engineering and mathematical sciences, nursing, midwifery, law. There are a number of different schools. So we do have 10. So that's quite a number of people that you have to connect in with. And the process that we were supporting was involving around about, when we first set out, we thought it was about 50 people across the organisation that were going to be in there working with the solution on a day-to-day basis. But then those that were going to be in receipt of the information when it comes to workload, and also that conversation that happens between a staff member and their manager around what kind of activities they're going to be working on and so forth in that planning stages. That's anywhere between 800 and 900 people. So we needed to have those colleagues in our mind, as well as those that were going to be doing the active work of planning and allocation.
Fantastic. It sounds like really an exciting project. In the project world, nothing is going to be easy and straightforward, as you probably would have learned by now. I'm keen to hear your thoughts and some of the learnings that you reflected on, Bridget, so far in the journey of this project. I think the project is in the final stages now. I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to ask you about what have you learned about the role of change and communication?
Yeah, no, thanks, Ali. And there's quite a few learnings. I call it the things I wished I had known. And it was something that I sat down and reflected upon recently, a few months ago. And I was thinking about, if I had a do-over, what would have loved to have known at the time, especially being a new business owner. So having the responsibility to implement a project at the very beginning of taking ownership of a business and business process. What are the things that I wish I had known, especially within a large organisation? And I reflected on in terms of how can I support others that might be going through this journey in the future, and also more broadly, how I can learn from this myself. So a number of the things that I noted down when I had reflected on it was, I always knew that the organisation had an approach to projects and the methodology.
Yes.
When it came to rolling out a technical solution, there was a specific language and framework and approach that's used. I knew we had one. I didn't know what was actually involved in it. So what it looked like, the different stages, the terminology, and I didn't know what was required of me at the time. So things like deliverables, like the requirements documentation, benefits realisation plans, terms like foundation, design, delivery, user acceptance testing, implementation, cation support, hypercare. I had an awareness of some of these things, but I didn't really know what it looked like. And I heavily relied on the team to get me up to speed at the very beginning of the project. And like I said, I didn't know what was expected of me individually in this piece. So I wished I had known some of those things up front. It's almost like a compulsory induction training session for a new business owner. Other things that I wished I had known is that it will take time to assemble the team members as they will likely need to be recruited in some cases. There aren't teams of people in the organisation waiting in the wings to stand up a project.
Yes.
You will likely experience some turnover in those team members along the way. You will need to put in time with critical roles amongst the team to ensure they understand your vision, the gaps in your knowledge and ways of working. It will take some time for new members to get up to speed as well. Don't assume that these team members know how to navigate our organisation and our enterprise systems and our environment. Don't assume that they are connecting in with colleagues within their own discipline in the organisation as well. So that was one thing I wanted to kind of call out and let people know that there is value in connecting in with your peers within the organisation as well as being part of the project. I learnt that I lent on the implementation partner we worked with when you are building up this team as well, because they know what they're doing. They know potentially their product and have come to that with that expertise. So as the other team members are assembling, you might lean on that implementation partner.
Yes.
And also that team members are likely to stay if you make it like any other environment, inclusive, as working from strength-based approaches, providing an inclusive space to share ideas and opinions and concerns, and even getting to know each other as well. And the tone that you set with working into a project team like that can have real positive impact. And negative impact if you don't get it right as well.
That getting to know each other in the team is one way to build the trust. And when you build only through trust, then the team probably can go forward without a lot of obstacles. I think the idea is that I need to know who you are before you need to tell me what you can do, which is basically a project team is a collective of individuals, but they are also people and they need to feel safe. And so your role as a leader, you're saying, is to set that tone and set that psychological safety.
Absolutely. Everyone's in it together.
Yes.
And so, yes, I see it is part of my responsibility to create that environment so people can flourish in that and feel safe to raise their concerns and share their ideas and so forth. And because if a person is comfortable in their role and what value that they're bringing to a piece of work, whether it be a large-scale project or even also just business as usual operations, that's where you get the best out of people. Nothing that can hold back a piece of work more than being hamstrung or held back or fearful that, that if you speak up, that, you won't get listened to. And that goes with your stakeholder engagement and your relationship management, as well as equally within the project team itself.
Yes. Yeah. Keen to know what some of your learnings are around communication with the stakeholders, what worked probably, what you thought would work, didn't work. Really keen to understand that.
Yeah, it's...
And we're talking about change and communication here.
Yeah. I knew change management and communications were important. I knew that. What I didn't know was how effective it was going to be to have someone focused on this in the project team, someone that reminded us, questioned us and challenged us throughout the experience and asked what the experience was going to be for the user, the stakeholder community and the organisation community throughout the project. So not just at the end, not just at the beginning, but just reminding us along the way, because we were actively engaging with our stakeholders throughout the project to do that co-design work. We wanted to make sure it was a fit for purpose for the people that were going to be using it on a day-to-day and as part of the cycle. And so we needed to work with those colleagues. So having someone in the team focused on what is it that they are going to experience, not at the very end, but also part of the journey as well, was incredible. It was incredible. And I knew it was also incredibly important to put in the work into talking and communicating about the change and letting people know what was coming and how it was going to impact them. And some of it was also scary to put my name against it as well.
Yes.
So, you're putting yourself out there and going,
Yes.
this is what we're going to do. It is scary sometimes to put your name against some of these things. But it's also even scarier to have a bunch of users knocking on your door complaining that they didn't know it was coming,
Yes.
sort of thing. So having someone skilled and focused on this was great support to the team and myself. The benefits in the project is that stakeholder engagement was fantastic and was valued by those colleagues that were engaging with it and also have been using it since then. And it also enormously helped me get over my hesitation and jitters and just get on with it.
Yes. Yep. This is why we always promote, Bridget, that when a project starts, we would like the project managers and the project leaders to think of getting a capable change management resource to be at the table in the early stages and not as an afterthought when the project starts. Because as you mentioned, it's all a continuous experience at the end of the day for the stakeholders. They don't feel it at the end. They don't feel it at the start. They feel it all the way along. And it's very tender. So that experience can change at any moment.
Yeah. I wished I had known this. And so I wished I'd known this at the beginning.
Yes.
So I could have maximized that to along the way and not just from now onwards.
Yes.
So, and this is why I sat down and undertook this, directed some thinking to this in terms of, well, if I feel this way, how are others feeling about it? Have they just learned on the job and they're getting on with it these days?
Yep.
And I thought, well, okay, what can we do to help support that as much as possible from the outset?
And what's your learning around the co-design and the engagement with the stakeholders? Was that a straightforward process, or was that also you thought it was going to be straightforward and then it turned out to be slightly more complex than you thought at the start?
It was really interesting, that experience, because I knew that we wanted to engage with stakeholders along the process and have reference groups and so forth and co-design sessions and have them involved in different stages from the beginning, during and throughout the implementation. And I knew that, and I wanted to listen to them first and throughout and get that feedback and that input along the way. What I didn't know that some stakeholders needed some encouragement to talk about what their needs were. Some colleagues in the business end of the university are not used to being listened to, which is a shame.
Yes.
Some colleagues are not used to having their opinions and ideas sought out and welcomed, and some will not shut up about them as well and enjoy having the platform to talk about some of these things. And other colleagues might prefer one-on-ones, and others need a group to stimulate the thinking. It was really interesting to reflect on that and being engaged in that in those environments to be able to observe it and learn from it as well. Throughout it was very much ideas can come from anywhere. And that's why we wanted to actively work with colleagues around this. And you might get some ideas and preferences from one thing, and it's not until you actually go out there and seek them and elicit them that you can really put those together and shape a solution that's going to work. We're not going to be able to meet everyone's needs. It's, you can't. Utopia doesn't exist, sort of exist. But you shouldn't ignore engaging with people and trying because you know that you're not going to be able to meet everyone's expectations around it. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't try.
Yes, yeah. And the challenge, Bridget, is that a project has always got a time frame and timeline. And often we see the projects that really struggle are the projects where the team or the project team do not take those engagements seriously because they're driven by a timeline rather than driven by an outcome of those workshops. So it sounds like you've paid the right attention to those because they can be, as you mentioned, each stakeholder, although they do probably the same job, they look at things differently, and the project team would need to flex up and down to actually manage those expectations, respecting the timeline. And so it's not really a straightforward process. Has that also happened during the UAT time?
Yeah, so We didn't have anything in August last year, and we went live in November with an enterprise platform. The speed at which we moved was the result of making some really tough choices and prioritising and staging the releases and being brave to go with something rather than work with nothing for another year. And so we had to be very diligent with our choices and the different stages that we were working to. And we also, after we went live with that first initial release, we took the opportunity to reflect on that and how we staged things. And then for the future releases, we tweaked things. We said, you know what, we really needed to spend more time in UAT. So when we go to the next release, we're going to think about expanding on that a little bit more and making sure that we get the most out of that opportunity. So it was great to reflect throughout the project through those different phases and learn along the way to see what was actually going to continue to work for us and making sure we don't waste people's time as well. So keying them up, staging it, engaging with them well in advance, and then and working to those particular timelines. There were some tough choices that we needed to make to be able to do that, to go at that pace. That has created complexity that we're still working through, but it's also, I see that as an opportunity as well, because we would never have been able to do it without making some of those tough choices.
Sure. And that's the role of the leadership in there. Now, imagine if you're not active and visible in there, those tough choices become really problems within the organization if not managed on a timely basis. I'm keen to hear more learnings. What are the things that you've learned or you wish you've known?
I don't know what else I don't know at the moment, Ali. So like I mentioned, there's I don't know what it means to be off project at the moment. So and so forth, and what that will mean into the future. So I keep asking myself some of these things and seeking know what's coming up in advance. For me, it's almost like I need to have someone do a change program for myself into the future as well in terms of what it's going to look like. So that's something that we've been working on actively as well. So it is hard to know what I don't know. And the other learnings, if I had known some of these things at the come April and July last year, I would have maximised the opportunity, because it's not often that you have an opportunity where you get investment into a new business process and platform. It is not often that it comes around. It's a strategic decision to do so, to invest in it, and you want the best outcome for a particular project. So my learnings is I wished I'd known this at the very beginning so I could really maximise that, and that I didn't feel like I was playing catch up along the way. I have found it incredibly valuable to work alongside the colleagues, contribute to that work directly to improve my understanding of what people experience working within the organisation and having to undertake this particular process and use the platforms that we are implementing. I found that incredibly helpful. It's that first seek to understand before you can actually, go on and build from that. And that came from directly interacting with everyone in the project, and not only in the project, but also in participating in those co-design sessions and participating in the user acceptance testing and being alongside and watching it grow and addressing those challenges that come up and those choices that need to be made along the way was facilitated easily because I understood. I was working in there and was directly seeing the impacts of some of the work we were implementing and some of the questions that were wanting to work with our colleagues on to answer.
And from my understanding, just for my listeners' sake, the project has been, especially the first two stages, have been implemented and they have received very positively by the groups and the teams. But that's a reflection of all the hard work and thinking and sleepless nights, obviously, that were happening within the project team. And I know that project hasn't really finished, but I've got a strong feeling that the amount of effort and your leadership in there has positioned their project to be one of the successful ones in the university, Bridget.
Yeah, it's not without the effort of the team.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
The participation and the engagement with the colleagues groups across the organisation. It has to be with everyone.
We are coming close to the end of the podcast. Thoroughly enjoying your learnings, Bridget, and I'm grateful that you're sharing your time. If I were one of the leaders out there who are just about to embark on a new project, what would be your 3 takeaways that you would like me to consider?
Actively listen to the colleagues that you're going to be providing the solution to, any solution or change or implementing a change with. Actively listen to them, genuinely seek their input, go out and do that in different ways.
Yes.
Share your vision. So share your vision and what you are trying to achieve as well, and have a real appreciation that great ideas can come from anywhere, and go into that with a very much open mind. That's something that I have found very useful, and not going in with a whole bunch of assumptions and presumptions.
Go in there with an open mind. It's easy said than done, obviously, but this is the world we live in, and that's probably the difference between a successful project and a project that is not quite successful. Bridget, congratulations to you and to your team and to La Trobe. I hope I can get you back at some stage and actually get the full picture of the learnings after you finish this particular project, and where you'll be doing things differently in the future. I also understand that you've been active in sharing those learnings within the organization, which is really going to be very helpful for the other leaders, because change comes in different colors and ways, but they impact people the same way. I think what you're doing is really fantastic. And me and then the change management community, we're grateful to our people like yourself driving those lessons and learnings and sharing them as well. Bridget, how would people get in touch with you?
Thanks, Ali, and thank you so much for having me along today.
Pleasure.
And I'm delighted to come back. If people would like to connect with me, I am on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to find me.
Fantastic. We're going to put all your information, Bridget, on the podcast information. It's been a pleasure having you in the Inner Game of Change podcast, Bridget. Until next time, stay well and stay safe.
Thanks, Ali.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening to this 50th episode of the Inner Game of Change podcast. To know more about this episode and others, check the innergameofchange.com.au website. And remember, subscribe, share, and comment. I can't wait to share with you my next episode. Until then, stay well and stay safe.